We listened to some BTS this week, and we're going to tell you what we think of it. Come join us for our Map of the Soul 7 BTS album review.
Today's album is Map of the Soul 7 by BTS. This is Hear Me Out.
Welcome back to Hear Me Out. This is episode 6 of our album listening club. Every episode, we're going to review a new album with you, and we invite you to listen along with us. With me, as always, is Rauzi.
Hey!
And OB.
Hey!
Last episode, we looked at Talent of the Hawk by the Front Bottoms. Go check that out if you want to know what we thought about it. And this episode, we're taking a look at Map of the Soul 7 by BTS. Stick around to the end to see our final ratings for this album and to see what we're going to listen to next week. And while you're at it, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss that upload. Obi, tell us about this album by BTS.
Thanks, Tyler. And by the way, very coincidentally, happy BTS Army Day to the both of you.
Is it BTS Army Day?
Yes.
No, Rauzi, you knew this. You've been talking about it for weeks.
Yeah.
You're right. I'm so
July
sorry.
9th. Also, happy birthday, Dad.
Does he listen to this?
He watches our YouTube videos. What's up, John?
What's up, John?
I'm not sure if that changes my behavior or not.
Don't let it. He loves you for you. I wish he did that for me.
I'm the son he never had.
This is just an out of...
He's probably said that before.
An out-of-pocket start to this episode.
This is exactly how this should have started. Yeah, happy Army Day. We're very honored to be a new blossoming member of the BTS Army with all of our reacts and stuff that we've done, and just that's why we're doing this album. Speaking of this album, Map of the Soul 7 is the 4th Korean language and 7th overall studio album by Korean pop and hip-hop group BTS. It was released on February 21st of 2020 and has a runtime of a whopping 74 minutes and 52 seconds, making it the longest album we've discussed to date by far. It is a follow-up to their 2019 EP Map of the Soul Persona, and as 5 songs from that EP show up on this album. Originally, this album was going to be split up into 3 EPs, Persona, Shadow, and Ego, but they put them all on one album, I believe, due to the military service requirements of the members, forcing them to go on a brief hiatus, which is ending kind of as we speak, I think. This album would be the first album by an Asian artist to simultaneously top the charts in all 5 major global markets, the US, UK, Germany, Japan, and France. Here in the US, it would debut on the Billboard Top 200 at number 1 and became the first BTS album to stay in the charts for an entire consecutive year after its release. It was certified platinum in November of 2020, selling over 1 million copies in just 9 months. Only Taylor Swift's Folklore would sell more copies in that year. Fun fact, the 7 on the album cover is actually composed of the number 7 in 7 different fonts, each one picked to represent a member of the band. We've gotten such an insanely positive response to the reaction videos we've put out of us reacting to BTS that we decided to do a deeper dive into their music. And we decided that their album, Map of the Soul 7, was a good place to start. And we had actually reviewed this album back in 2020 as a part of a thing we did, reviewing and ranking every album that came out in that year. That review of this album...
That's not true. It wasn't every album that came out that year.
As a part of a thing we did, reviewing and ranking... Oh, every! I put every in quotes. Yeah. That review of this album, in hindsight, sucked. And to be fair to us, the reviews of just about every album we listened to also sucked. To summarize our review of Map of the Soul 7, we generally preferred the rap songs, while we thought the poppier songs were generic.
Did you go back and watch it?
I did. We also claimed they had, quote, like 1,000 members, and called them a stereotypical boy band on multiple occasions, not to mention we couldn't handle that it was in a different language. So without further ado, let us try this again. Rauzi, you've been noticeably absent from all of our viral videos about BTS. I'm curious to hear your opening thoughts first.
Yeah, I said in the last video, I said we talked about there's 3 members, and I'm waiting for the comment. There's 3 of them.
There's only 2, really.
So I did, as part of that, I wanted to start before I give my thoughts of just saying hello to everyone that I haven't gotten to present myself on camera to in Army. I'm hoping that I can put some good thoughts in front of everyone here on this album, and I haven't had as much exposure as the other 2 guys have, but
he lives far away, people. That's why.
I live far away, but I've done a lot. I did do a lot of listening to this, and I've definitely a different appreciation for this band and this album than I did back in 2020. Because kind of like this, actually couldn't remember a single one of the songs when I sat down to listen to this from back 2020, but I remembered basically only what Obi had said, that I liked the rap songs, but I wasn't always a huge fan of the pop songs. And really, my opinion, I still like the rap songs better, but I've really got a whole different appreciation for the pop songs. I think overall the production is mind-blowing. It's really good. This is extremely well-produced pop record and hip-hop record, and the pieces I really liked were like some of the way the backing vocals and stuff were mixed and some of the effects used, and I really like the way that the band did pre- and post-choruses in the songs. But in general, I have a completely different appreciation, mostly from sitting down and actually reading the English translation of the lyrics with the album. I'm very impressed by the way the band puts lyrical depth in the album, using literary, cultural, and historic themes to convey messages through symbolism. It made me learn a lot of stuff and research a lot of things, and it also came across as a really authentic way to express your feelings. So overall, I really enjoyed this a lot more than I expected I was going to.
Tyler.
As I continue my BTS journey, I am constantly impressed by this group. I enjoyed my time listening to this album, which is not something I can say for most of the albums that we listen to on this show. This album reminded me very much of the pop sounds of the late 2010s. Like, especially when I first listened to it, I was like, yes, this is what pop music sounded like 5-10 years ago. And I think that whether BTS had influence on that or they were pulling from influences from what music sound like, maybe that remains to be seen, but like, it really brought me back to that time, which was kind of fun, I guess. I just hadn't really listened to a lot of pop music from that time in a while. I did, like Rauzi said, I liked actively listening to this album and like reading the translations with it, because obviously when music is in a language that you don't understand, first listen, you're just listening to like what is going on the track. You don't know any of the metaphors. You can't get any of that because you can't understand what they're saying. So like reading along with the lyrics did give me an additional appreciation, much like Rauzi said. I liked learning a lot about like the subunits and stuff like that as I dive deeper into like research for the album. The one thing that I wanted to highlight that I thought was the most impressive thing was the use of like metaphor and like double and triple entendre throughout the whole thing with like the lyricism. I think that was kind of my highlight, and I had fun in putting those things in. The things that they put in that are up for interpretation for the listener, I found enjoyment in that. That is all for now.
We'll see you soon. Yeah, I'll just echo what you guys have said so far.
Echo.
This is really the first time I've sat down and listened to BTS with the intention of actually listening to it and not just getting it over with to listen to 50 other albums that we have to put on an arbitrary
Phoning it in
spreadsheet.
is what you could call what we did for that
we
video.
We phoned the
100%.
hell out of that thing in. And to be honest, at first listen through 5, it was overwhelming. But I was basically just like you said, listening to the sounds and just kind of the music and stuff like that.
I'm glad we had like a month to prepare for this one. If we would have
was-
done our like usual 2-week rotation, it would have been tough.
Yeah.
Yeah,
No,
there's no way.
I really like that we had a lot of time to ruminate with this one. After like several dozen listens and some time following along with the translations for the lyrics, it finally got to a point where I felt comfortable and familiar with the album, like I do with albums that are in English. And that's when I truly, appreciated the things that you guys have talked about already, the metaphors, the incredibly intellectual lyricism and poetic lyricism that exists throughout. It's not just generic love songs. It is political statements. It is like looking deep into oneself and a lot of self-reflection and stuff like that. I think there were some moments on the album that were a little generic and a little lackluster. But overall, this album was incredibly enjoyable to listen to, and I'm very glad we're giving it another shot.
Obi, I gotta say, I like what you said about the fact that the comment on the like generic love song thing, because I think thinking back to 2020, I think that was my impression of the album without actually having listened to the lyrics. Right? Is that because all the songs sounded like that just instrumentally, like that type of music, right? And what we expected from generic pop music at that time was flat love songs with very little actual thought and emotion put into them. So that's where, like, what a true pleasure to be able to read through the lyrics and find that there's so much depth to this band. And I think they also explore a lot of different styles, which I was pretty intrigued by too. They're not all the same song, right? Which
the comments on our React videos have really highlighted that BTS has a lot of different styles and genres exploration in their music.
And that made it really enjoyable as well. I love that. I love when bands play with different genres and sounds, because it means that they're not phoning it in. To me, it means that they're trying new things and that they're passionate about what they're doing.
As far as, hour and 15-minute long albums go, like, I definitely felt like it was an hour and 15 minutes long at some points. But the fact that they switched it up so much and kept everything so unique throughout definitely is a testament. It helped so much for an album this long to help me get through it, by the fact that they switched it up so often and so frequently and did every genre that they touched on pretty well every time.
There's very few other albums you could pick from bands that I haven't really listened to before that you could put in front of me at an hour and 15 minutes long that I would have been able to get to, like, actually sit and listen to like a dozen times or whatever. Like, I just think that it does speak to the quality of the album, because while yes, I do think like the length is challenging a little bit, there are other hour and 15-minute albums that feel way longer. They keep it fresh throughout, like you said.
Now, what I will say is I think what BTS does really well here, as a second point to that, is the way that they have the themes laid out in this album helps me, at least, with the whole length thing. It's clearly like 3 different laid out things, and those 6 songs per thing, per theme, have that central theme. They're all talking about that central theme. So like you said, it is 3 different EPs that are all just on the same album, which helps kind of like break it up into like act 1, 2, and 3. Now, speaking of the themes, did anybody do any research on the themes?
I did.
Do you want to talk about it?
We can both talk about it.
You go first.
All right.
Wait, who wants to sound smart by saying the philosopher's name?
You do.
No, I don't know how to pronounce it.
I was assuming that was where it was going. I pronounce it as Carl Jung.
I've heard Jungian.
Well, that would be, Carl Jung. Rauzi, are you familiar with this? Did you do any research on this?
I did some, but I did not do that much on this specific part. So, no, I'm not very familiar.
Yeah, so the album is structured to follow the analytic psychological theories of Carl Jung: persona, shadow, and individuation, or ego.
Individuation is a word?
Yes.
All right.
Yes, it is like basically the act in the process of finding one's true self. And as I read through the Wikipedia on his 3 different psychological theories, I was just like, wow, I'm reminded as to why I hate this.
Yeah, you have gone on record as not liking psychology very much.
I like
philosophy more so.
I like philosophy, and I think this stuff is interesting, but it's just always the wording around it is so beat around the bush. Like, just say what you mean instead of like, well, the relativity of the other way if you do it this way, blah, blah, blah. I have it broken, so I have kind of definition. So persona is the individual's method of quote-unquote blending into an environment to fit in better, kind of adapting different personas, if you will. Chameleon effect. Shadow is the unconscious complex defined as the repressed, suppressed, or disowned qualities of the conscious self. These qualities can both be positive and negative. In more negative contexts, the shadow represents things that people do not or cannot accept about themselves. So kind of like the evil, like kind of like the inner voice, the inner voice that's always like talking down and, kind of the self-doubt and self-loathing type of thing. And then ego, which is the part of the person that is most familiar and who one trusts the most. Individuation is kind of like the act of discovering your ego and like understanding your ego. So yeah, hence that is finding oneself and, kind of discovering one's, they talk a lot about throughout the album, talking about like how fame is affecting like just the way that they interact, the way that they live, how it affects their life, and just kind of how I really like, we'll kind of get into it, but I just really like the way that themes, all three of these themes kind of tie throughout the album lyrically and musically as well.
It's very interesting, especially since I didn't really do the research on that, but I made notes of I said this is almost like a concept album in my mind. I actually would call it a concept album. There's a concept that structures the whole thing, and I could feel that throughout, even without doing this research into it. So I think that that's really interesting, and it does add even more to that's exactly how they wrote these individual songs too, is by picking out these really interesting concepts or different things from history or other famous quotes and stuff, and turning that into a song about themselves. It's a really, really cool way to write songs.
With this Hear Me Out episode, we're gonna do something a little bit different. Normally we just kind of talk a bunch of bullshit for a half hour or so, and then Tyler edits it down to about 5 minutes. And
That's not true.
Obviously, we've been doing this BTS thing for long enough, and we know you guys appreciate just thoroughness and completeness. So we decided that we're going to do this one a little different. We're going to go through track by track and basically talk about each song. So we make sure if your favorite song is on this album, we're not going to miss it unless it's on featuring Sia, and then sorry.
So the first song on the album is Intro Persona, which is RM's solo song. I love this song. Again, the hip hop and pop, rap parts are still my favorite, even though I appreciate the pop parts a lot more than I did the last time I listened. And this is a great way to start an album. It's so high energy with a great beat, great guitar, great attack and delivery on the rap lines, and it hits you right out the gate with the overview of what Map of the Soul is gonna be like, but with that sort of deep inner self tug of war that you kind of expect with this.
Yeah. Fun fact. Did you guys know that the intro and the interlude and outro all sample earlier BTS songs?
I think I read that somewhere actually.
Yeah, so this song, and what I should have done was I should have listened to those songs that they sampled so I could talk about how it's included, but I did not do that. So I will just say as a fun fact, this song samples intro School Love Affair from their 2014 EP School Love Affair.
Oh, cool.
Appropriately named.
I think I agree with Rauzi. I think this was a great way to start off the album that I was not expecting the first song to have just a really just kind of
punch you in the face rap style.
Yeah. Rap style, and also a heavy guitar riff.
Mm-hmm.
I
was not expecting a guitar riff out of the first song. When I was looking kind of at a breakdown on Wikipedia, they described it as a Warped Tour type guitar riff, and I was I don't know if I agree with that necessarily.
Coming from people who listen to Warped Tour music.
Yeah. I mean, that's our lane. So I could be it's heavy and it's rock for sure, but it's not very pop punky, but yeah,
putting distort on a guitar does not just make it Warped Tour.
It kind of felt like that was the implication behind it, but yeah, just the line with persona, who the hell am I? Like you said, that tees it up. That tees it up perfectly for how this album is gonna go. And I think it's a perfect opening track.
Yeah.
That brings us to Boy With Love featuring Halsey. My notes on this one was just it's the first one that's just to me just a generic love song. It seems like it's kind of just talking about a love that you feel, or more so maybe the feelings you're feeling while falling in love.
I really liked. I found out apparently Halsey's been a big BTS fan since 2017.
Oh, cool.
And I thought her voice and her vocal performance that she did on this song, I thought fit in really well with BTS and their sound, and just the sound of the song as well. I thought she just fit right in.
Yeah, I agree with you. It was a great feature, and while I do agree with Tyler, there are a couple moments on this album that feel a little bit more generic. I really think this is just a really strongly executed pop song, though, right? You can call it generic, but the production is incredible. The Halsey's feature is great, and it's super catchy. This has maybe been stuck in my head more than any other song on this album, and I wouldn't say it's anywhere near my favorite, but that just speaks to the strength of the songwriting on the chorus of this one.
I want it.
Yeah.
Thanks for that. That was really good.
Thank you. Yeah. Well, and there's a couple songs on here that are kind of just a pop song.
Yep.
But then I also feel like there are some, this one, and then I think Moon as well kind of had like a funk disco pop type thing that like made you just really want to like shake your ass.
Yeah,
and
I love
just
that.
Like,
love that.
It's roll your windows down, sing along type music. It was just so catchy and infectious. That brings us to the third track, Make It Right, which, funnily enough, when I first heard this song, I said, kind of sounds like an Ed Sheeran song.
Yeah, I did the exact same thing.
And then,
I clocked it immediately.
Yep. And then, lo and behold, co-written and produced by Ed Sheeran.
Oh, really?
Yep.
Oh, you didn't know that?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Co-written by Ed Sheeran. And I was
That
like,
makes sense.
good goddamn. That fucking makes sense. Yeah, I mean, this is kind of like a more like low-key pop, indie, kind of almost like singer-songwriter-y type. It's an Ed Sheeran. It's kind of an Ed Sheeran type song with BTS over it. Mm-hmm. I really like the chorus. I think it's a super catchy chorus. I think most of these choruses in these songs are catchy choruses.
Yeah.
A little more generic as far as like the instrumentation and the music goes, but like still just a really, really nice pop song.
Yeah, this is the first one where I would say that I really felt like they didn't do like a ton of really like new and innovative things with the song, which is okay. I mean, that's not how everyone's going to be, and obviously they were going for a little bit of a different vibe with the more like Ed Sheeran sound. It was a little bit too generic for me instrumentally, but there was a really cool thing that I liked where in the background, and I didn't catch it till like the 6th or 7th time I listened to the album, they have some like glockenspiel or bells or something buried deep in the mix. Like I almost couldn't catch it. And I love that. And I wish it was more forward in the mix because it was a really cool depth piece that they added. And that's just one of the things that throughout the album I really like is they layer in a lot of really cool things in the background. So even on a song like this, which really was not my favorite song on the album, there are some cool elements to grab that I still really like.
That brings us to Jamais Vu. Jamais Vu, so like this was like kind of the first ballad. Is that fair to say?
I would,
Yep.
yeah,
I
for like
think
the first half of the song, yeah.
Yeah. So that was like a good pace breakup for me at this point in the album. Then I started to do some research on like what Jamais Vu is. Mm-hmm. It's like the opposite of deja vu, right? So it's like deja vu is like you feel like you've seen this thing before, but it's like, how would you describe it?
Right?
Yeah, but you haven't. It's like opposite of that, where it's like you haven't seen this thing before, but
no. It's something when something very familiar to you
doesn't look like it feels
foreign.
different.
Yeah.
So it's like kind of a double entendre of that as a metaphor for like the relationship that this person is talking about, whether or not that's themselves looking in or like with another person or whatever. I really liked that. That whole metaphor and that kind of like what this song made me think of when I was like listening to it, and I rated it pretty high because of that. Like for me, this is one of the more like thought-provoking ones where I was like, oh, I have heard of Jamais Vu before, but never really thought of it, or thought into it too much, and it really was a thinker for me.
Yeah, I think outside of like with Persona, that got me down the whole rabbit hole of like the Carl Jung like psychology type thing. This is the first one where I like. First of all, the first thing I did is like, what does that mean? What is Jamais Vu? And yeah, it was the first song that was like, oh, like that's really clever and like that's an interesting way to write a song because yeah, there's like so many songs about a love, a relationship becoming distant, but like I don't think I haven't seen too many that phrase it like this.
I have to agree. I had never heard the term Jamais Vu before, so it was really fun for me to research that and see how it really plays into the song. But I also just think this one this is like the first one where I think I felt the heart and the emotion like it hit me immediately. And I think that's something that really needs to be said is the performance really conveys the raw emotion behind the song as well as having these great lyrics behind it. And that just adds so much to the depth of this one.
Yeah, I really liked I really liked the way that it came in, like Tyler said. It was kind of a really like kind of ballady, slow, softer song to start. And I can't remember whose verse it was, but about like 2/3 of the way through the song, this just like really heavy bass and trap beat came in, and it just like went hard. And I was like, oh shoot, that was a really great switch up to kind of keep you on your toes with just like the pacing of the album. That brings us to Dionysus, and this is the one song that I remembered from our original review of the album. I liked this song on Spotify, and it would come on every once in a while when I would shuffle my liked songs, and it's just amazing. It's just a great rap song. It has like the group rap style. It's kind of a song that talks about like Dionysus is what the God. Did I know?
He's the god. I knew him as the god of like wine and spirits, but I think the god, the metaphor they're using here is the god who embodies the joy and pain of creation, which I think is kind of what they're going for with this one, because they're using the god of Dionysus as a metaphor for their art to say like, hey, or fame even, where it's like, hey, I really enjoyed doing this, like creating it, but there's this bad side of it where it's like, you know, with fame comes all those negative things, or like a lot of pressure or things like that.
I think it also talks about like kind of like the lifestyle of being a rock star with the drinking and the partying and all of that kind of stuff. I remember when I first heard this song, it reminded me of like a rap song that would appear on like a Travis Barker album, because it just kind of had like drums. It had like acoustic drums, and they could be programmed, but they're acoustic sounding drums with guitar, and it just the rap delivery was incredible on this song, and not to mention the double time last chorus. I mean, that comes absolutely out of nowhere, but it's just like so good.
Yeah, I noted the double time last final course as well. I also think like there's this really, really cool thing they do here in terms of a contrast where like, so Dionysus is typically like popularly represented as like the drunk god among Greek mythology with the whole wine consumption and stuff. And they frame this song to make it seem like it's a generic like partying song. And then when you dig into the lyrics and deeper into it, and actually sit and read it like we did, it's such a really cool way to make you actually think about like you had kind of said about the joy of creation and all of that, and just like the different terms they use. Like they mentioned Dionysus' staff, which is called a thyrsus, which I had never heard of before.
I googled that too.
I googled it, and then also they used Korean. They use traditional Korean terms in here as well. They use the word I'm going to pronounce it wrong, but onghae, I believe is how you pronounce it, which is a term from traditional folk songs in Korea that it's comparable to like an exclamatory phrase used to synchronize effort and relieve stress while working. Similar to like a heave-ho or a yo-ho-ho type thing that for us, since that makes more sense to us, I think that's a really, really cool thing to add in as well that makes me learn more about the Korean culture, but also adds additional depth to the song of like, there's this, you know, part of it that's like work for them, I guess, kind of, and like synchronizing their efforts in this creation or whatever, right? It's very, very cool, and I still don't feel like I understand every part of it, but that's part of what makes it fun.
Yeah, and then just the last thing I'll say about Dionysus is one thing I started to notice the more times I listened through this album is there is a sound for each song, but they're not afraid to completely change the style of music depending on whose verse it is. Mm-hmm. So in the bridge of this song, like it's very like most of the song is very guitar drum driven, but then the bridge before RM's like, "Are you ready to get hyped?" It's like this just like it turns completely into this like trap style like synth bass, kind of like bouncy synth like bridge just out of nowhere, and it fits. And it does. I think it's an incredibly good job of just like being able to, just completely switch it up, but also make it like fit seamlessly.
All right. So then the next song, the 6th track, is Interlude Shadow. This is Suga's solo song, I believe. Suga. I said this is a really, really good track lyrically. Again, definitely more of like a self-reflective one. Obviously, it's meant to represent that whole shadow part of the album, so it really focuses on like the inner struggle with your shadow and that voice. And I liked the imagery of like the higher that you fly, the lower you feel is kind of something that's pushed throughout this, and like the negative voices are stronger. A really, really interesting insight into what it must be like for someone who achieves fame in the way that they have.
Yeah, I noted that like there's a big fear of failure kind of theme kind of through this, or like maybe the pressure of failure. And my note was like, yeah, it's a lot different if you put out a song about taking a dookie on the floor and it gets 4 views on YouTube. But if you flop an album when you're BTS, there's a lot more eyes on you, a lot more pressure. So I could feel like maybe the pressure of like creation of doing what you want versus what other people want you to do is kind of a lot of pressure. And the other thing, I noticed there was a stark contrast in like that last verse, and I was wondering if that's kind of like the shadow personified at the end.
I think one of the things that I noted too is like in the beginning, it's a very like kind of soft, flowy, airy, wispy delivery of like the I want to be rich, I want to be king. And then at the end, it's just like louder and heavier, and he's like delivering those lines almost with more of a conviction, which to me either feels like a gain of confidence and like acceptance, or you're talking about like 2 different parts of him kind of going back and forth, and like which one is going to come out on top, like this kind of scared, or is it going to be the the shadow with the confidence and maybe a little bit of arrogance or something like that. But yeah, I did notice that too, and I thought that was really cool. And then they kind of pivot after that, kind of the hard end of Shadow. They pivot to what is the lead single for the album, Black Swan, which is kind of it just reminds me of a ballet in a way. There's a lot of...
Is that because it's called Black Swan?
And I might be biased because of the name, but there's a lot of the plucky strings, and it just kind of like delicate plucky string work in it. The one thing, it's kind of just has like a generic beat, but like the one thing that I really liked about this song was the bass. The bass, there was just these slides. The bass was just sliding all over the place, and it was just dropping. And I thought that was so cool to kind of juxtapose the softness and delicacy of the song in kind of a different direction on the low end.
Yeah, I really, really like this song. I thought it was an exceptionally good change of pace going into this. Another one that lyrically I think is really cool. So I read into the lyrics on this one a little bit, and so they're actually doing that. They're doing a play on like it was a famous quote from a dancer of some sort. The quote being, "A dancer dies twice, once when they stop dancing, and the first death is the more painful." So like the theme here is like, in my impression was that it was like this loss of passion or joy in making music, maybe because of the pressure we were talking about on the last track, and the feeling of that first death and how painful it is, and that juxtaposed against that the kind of it's almost like haunting the strings a little bit. I know it's ballet-like, but it's an incredibly cool way to balance the music with the theme in the lyrics.
Yeah, I did some research on that first death, like the first death of their creativity, and kind of using that, comparing it to like the pressure that they feel to create what they want to create, or what maybe like Army tells them they should create, is like kind of the two ideas kind of fighting back and forth there, which I thought was really, really cool. And that brings us to Filter. I was surprised that Filter was in this version, because it feels more like Persona, or this half of the album. It feels more like Persona, because to me it's talking about how you like filter your personalities throughout who you're with, like code switching and stuff. What did you guys think?
Yeah, that ultimately seemed like the gist that I got from the song, just talking about how like, basically it was like, it kind of sounded like from the perspective of somebody's not necessarily desperate to be loved, but basically somebody who's like, I love you so much, I will basically do whatever I need to do to be the person that you want to love. That's kind of how I interpret it. Yeah, so kind of code switching in a way to fit in.
Yeah, this one, like when I was doing the research on what people thought this song meant, was one that there was a million different ways people like interpreted it, which I think sometimes is the mark of a good song or good songwriting or good art, that different people interpret it different ways and it means something different to plethora of different people.
I think that's one of the best things about the band so far. So I think that there's a lot of different ways to interpret what they've done. And this is another good example of where they just out of nowhere pull a Latin pop song out, and it sounds amazing and fits Jimin really well, but also just it works in the album well, even if like there's some debate of if it could be in the Persona section thematically. I mean, I don't know. It's a really, really strong song, I think.
Yeah, I wonder if any of that, because it sounds like Rauzi didn't look too much into this, but I looked at like all the songwriters, and they're different for almost all the songs. So I'm wondering if a lot of that, like when we hear the different genres coming through, is because of the songwriters that they're working with.
They probably have a large team of people they work with, and it's like, we want the best people in this genre to work on this song to make it sound as good as it does.
I mean, I also wonder if it's not part of like, especially since this is another solo song, like I think they're also trying to match style to the person who's performing the solo song. And so it could be, maybe it's what Jimin really wanted to write a song that was like this, or it fits his vocal delivery better, whatever it might be, right?
Yeah, going off of that, I just wanted to say this, like right off the bat, once we started this, once I knew the names of the, actually before that even, Jimin has always had a voice that has stuck out to me. I think when we watched the Festa Room video, or maybe even the Tiny Desk, I was just like, whenever Jimin would sing, I was like, that is a distinct voice. I can pick that voice out. It's so almost like feminine and airy in a way that like is very unique. And I think the delivery on here matched that like Latin pop style of music so well, and it was a perfect fit.
All right, that brings us to track 9, which is My Time, and this was Jungkook's solo song, I believe. This was not necessarily my favorite song on the album, but there was some good like introspective lyrics here, and there was like I called it like a pulsating effect on the instrumentation that I really enjoyed. I enjoyed that kind of vibe that drove the song, but it's just a little bit more stripped back, but it did a good job of like building tension, I thought, throughout the pre-chorus.
The theme of this one was like growing up too fast and dealing with the pressures of like the spotlight again. They're really like this entire album's theme to me is like really talking a lot about what their experience been becoming so famous. And this one was really talking about like reflecting on the past, maybe some guilt with your past self of like that person wanted this and now I'm stuck with it.
Yeah, I think the way that I saw that it was talked about too is just kind of like how they, and maybe specifically Jungkook or BTS in general, just like they got so famous so quickly that they had to forego a lot of their like
growing up
like they didn't have a teenage boy experience that they can look back on. They were famous when they were, damn near teenage boys. Yeah, I think this is probably technically my least favorite song on the album. It's not bad. It's just probably the most generic and forgettable to me. The chorus is good. There's a weird kind of scatting vocal like freestyle at the end that I didn't love either. It was a fine song, but definitely probably my least favorite on the album.
That would bring us to talking about Louder Than Bombs. This is one of the ones that like the metaphor was like extremely obvious to me like right away. I didn't really have to do much research on this one. So the idea being like the bombs are the loud bad thing. So whatever you do to like fight through that adversity, you need to be louder than the bombs. So like you and your group of people and your support system or whatever, the things you have around you, you need to like be louder than the loudest thing, which I think is a cool metaphor and a cool way to like portray that of like, whether it's like you need to get like your community together to like be louder than whatever is going on or whatever. I think that's a really good message and a good way to portray through metaphor the bombs as like the bad thing.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I said this is another kind of change of pace moment, I thought, where it's a little bit more, I actually almost would call it like dark and brooding even. And certainly brings forth a lot of emotions, I would think. It's not necessarily my absolute favorite because I think that there are some points where it's a little slow for me, but it's extremely catchy. Like I actually today, this song was stuck in my head for a long portion of the day. I really love the chorus on this one, and the vocal performance is so good.
Yeah, the choruses are huge. It's just huge. Just
Like loud bombs, maybe.
I was gonna say maybe they could be louder than bombs, but yeah, I think the choruses are great, and I think that production kind of doesn't really change a whole lot throughout. So it kind of is kind of one note throughout the song, so it kind of loses me a little bit. But I think the choruses are definitely the highlight of this song, and the message as well. I think the message is great. I think, just the louder, silencing the haters, the critics, whatever it is, sadness, depression, despair, by being louder than those things, I think is a great message.
And that'll bring us to track 11, which is On. I particularly enjoyed the harmonies and backing vocals on this one. I think they do a lot of really cool harmonies and vocal layering, but it's just a little more prevalent on certain songs like this one. And the sort of like marching band snare drum beat was a really fun way to drive this song. I will say it is another one that it didn't stick with me as much as other songs, but when I listen to it, I do really love the energy and sort of the feel of it.
I agree. I think with everything you said so far, I think it was definitely falls into the songs that were a little more generic on the album, but I do think the marching band elements of the song helped it stand out a little bit. In the bridge, there was like a blasting like sousaphone tuba thing, and like the whole brass section was boom, which was really cool and definitely different than anything else on the album.
What did that sousaphone sound like?
Boom.
Nice.
If you play them back to back, like that was spot on.
That was.
Next up, we have my personal favorite track on the album, and that would be
Is that how you're pronouncing
that?
Pretty good, honestly.
So the fun fact, the title in Korean, I think it's pronounced like "wo." The Korean title, but it's
so the
English,
title is like translated to this.
to like It's like
hug.
and it comes from the word wugkada, meaning to take action or to say words driven by a sudden, strong anger. Phonetically, it also sounds like it denotes retching, like throwing up. So, but anyways, this song is just the best song on the album, in my opinion. I think that the beat, I think that everything instrumentation about it goes so hard. And just as Tyler, what's the thing that you say about songs you like? Fucking rips.
Yeah, that's what he says.
It fucking rips. It goes hard. The message about like anger and how people are not like maybe how people channel their anger into like in the wrong ways, I think is so impressive, and it is demonstrated through their rapping abilities perfectly. It's a perfect song.
Yeah, I agree. It rips.
It does rip.
It rips and rules.
I didn't call it perfect, I liked Dionysus was my favorite on the album, so this is second to that, but it is incredibly good. And I think
similar vibes there.
Similar vibes. Well, that's the vibe that I like the most of their stuff. And I think that, to your point, this is still a song of the times, in my opinion, where it's very easy to get frustrated and angry about the actions that other frustrated and angry people are taking out there in the world. And so I think I saw a lot to relate to in this one, and that's a big part of why I like it so much as well.
Yeah, I mean, echoing everything you guys said, the main thing I was going to say was I think that this would have been my favorite song without like looking up, even without looking up like what it means or whatever. This song just rips.
Yeah.
So
and I think if we had any shred of a doubt in our minds that the rappers were not good at rapping, those would have been thrown out the window after this song. When I was looking through the personnel and the credits on this album, I noticed something that I've never seen before, and that was called, his name is Supreme Boy.
No, it's not.
Yes, it is. His name is Supreme Boy, and he does the rap arrangement for this song and also Dionysus. He works a lot on Dionysus and Ugh.
Supreme Boy.
And
I guess I like Supreme Boy.
And I don't know if there's something to be said about needing like a specifically good rap arrangement, if that's like the way that the 3 or 4 voices work with one another, if that needs arranging. But props to Supreme Boy, because the rapping and the rap arrangement and just the way that they play off each other vocally is just incredible.
Last week I went to Taco Bell and I ordered a Supreme Boy.
Oh my god.
0 O'Clock is next up on the album. This one was about like having like a fresh start. I like that, like the 0 O'Clock being like at midnight the day starts over, so why can't you start over with whatever you're struggling with, or like let's give yourself like a fresh start. This is one of the more slower and like introspective songs on the album. Another probably more on the ballady side of things. I really liked it. I thought it was good. It was one of the ones that I noticed that had acoustic guitar, which many of them did not.
That is, yeah.
So I thought that was nice. What'd you all think?
Yeah, I think I agree with you, Tyler. I do. It is ballady, but I think the chorus is a little bit happier and bouncier than a really ballad song usually is. That like, and you're gonna be happy line, it feels very uplifting to me, and it's kind of an interesting, it's almost like a willing yourself to be uplifted is kind of how I feel the theme of the song, because it's like you're dealing with all these struggles, whatever. When 0 hits the clock, you're gonna force yourself to push through, and you have another fresh day and you can start over. And kind of it's me putting my own experiences onto it, but it's kind of like a just a way you train yourself to learn how to handle each day as it comes versus letting them bad days stack on top of each other.
Yeah, I think this song, I think these are 2 really good songs in a row, because I think UGG really showcases the rapping abilities of BTS, and I think 0 O'Clock does an incredible job of highlighting the singers and how truly good of singers they are as well. I think there's so many just really falsetto, so many harmonies, very airy, which matches kind of like the airy, like poppy production. And it also, and talking about like the kind of, I feel like the song is optimistic. I feel like it's kind of looking forward. It's like not dwelling on, the sadness. It's like, if you do operate on military time, then yes, when the clock hits 0, it is a new day. It is time to start over.
I had that thought too when I was listening.
For those of us who use a 12-hour clock.
So next one is Inner Child, which is V's solo song. I think this is another one that's on the uplifting side, and actually is a little bit more emotional. Makes me a little bit emotional because it's sort of like a message to your inner child and younger self, and sort of missing some of the things that you had and felt when you were a kid, and remembering how you felt then and trying to console your younger self. Very, very interesting thematically, and I really enjoyed the lyrics on this one.
Yeah, I would agree. I think, as is the case for a lot of the songs that become a little more forgettable for me throughout the album, I think they are all increased in quality by the lyrics. I think no matter how generic or forgettable, I use that term very loosely because I remember it, a song may be, the lyrics will always have some sort of meaning. They will always be significant, and I can't say that there's a song with bad lyrics on the album, and this one especially too. I just think another really uplifting and kind of like kumbaya moment in the chorus that I really enjoyed.
Yeah, this one, I mean, I agree with everything you're saying. This is probably my least favorite song on the album. I think it was probably just at a point where I was getting a little burnt out of the album, just because I'm pretty sure if we looked at it, this is probably around the hour mark, maybe a little before. And that's kind of when I would be accustomed to albums ending and we're like halfway through. So I think I was just kind of like, this one kind of just got lost in the shuffle for me a little bit, and it didn't really do anything for me.
Yeah, I would also say, to OB's point, one of the things that is both a pro and a con on this album is the lyrics. And what I mean by that is that, unfortunately, I don't speak Korean. And so the problem with that is that I could try, right?
You might have to.
But the problem with that is that if I sit and I cannot sit and for an hour and 15 minutes read the lyrics of this album and listen to it in my regular everyday life all the time. And the album is, for me, much worse without that, because that is one of, if not the best parts of this album, is the way that they are writing the lyrics to the songs and telling the stories. So this is a song that if I listened to it without the lyrics, I would not get probably any enjoyment out of it, if I'm being fully honest. But the lyrics make it very enjoyable.
I mean, I think that's just the case with all music. Like, you want to be like the part of the artistry of songwriting is, like the
writing
the song and like the metaphors. So like when an artist says "Dookie on the floor, Dookie till I'm 4," you it makes you feel something. And
yeah, in your drawers anyway.
Yeah, that's right.
Next we have Friends. I know you'll see.
That's good.
Thank you. This is
That was the iCarly theme song. I have to stop. You started the iCarly theme song.
I know. Yeah, I know. Yeah. I couldn't remember how the Friends theme song went, but I could only remember the iCarly theme song. This is another song that, again, I don't know if it's the fact that this album is getting longer and longer, but the songs start to feel more and more the same. Though I do think the message in this one and the chorus stand out to me a little bit more as being like, "You are my soulmate" type of thing. I learned that this is a song written about V and Jimin's long-standing friendship. Do you know about the dumpling incident?
I wrote, look at my first bullet point.
Do you know about the dumpling incident? Rauzi, do you know about the dumpling incident?
I do not know about the dumpling incident.
Can I try?
Yeah,
I think I know.
We probably have the same knowledge on the dumpling incident.
I think the dumpling incident. I think the dumpling incident was an argument that they had about eating during practice or something like that.
Yes, it was like, it was like, do we eat and dance, or do we eat then dance?
Yeah.
And that is referenced in this song, which I just think is really fun.
That's
and
awesome.
I would just like to say, and this is maybe some advice that I can give to Jimin and V, that we have had this argument, the three of us, and what we did was we implemented a union lunch break.
Correct. All right, I'll be honest. Mostly my fault. I got the most irritable when I hadn't eaten it, and it's mostly my fault.
So we'll stop. We'll go get lunch for Rauzi, and then and we do that to avoid a dumpling incident.
Right.
Because
when you have a dumpling incident, you know what happens later. Then you dookie on the floor.
Yeah, right.
Yep.
That's right. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
To the points you're making about the song, though, this is in a stretch that I think.
What song are we talking about?
We're talking about Friends. This is in a stretch. This is in a stretch of the album where instrumentally, the music behind the words, it doesn't do much of anything for me, to be honest with you. It's not my favorite type of music in general to start with. I like their execution on everything, but it's just not doing a lot. And there's too many songs in a row that, like you said, are feeling the same. However, again, it's carried by the emotion of the lyrics. I love the story of their friendship, and viewing it as a soulmate relationship is very sweet. I love it.
Yeah, I think it's super cool to like normalize, like, obviously we talk about romantic soulmates, but I think like some people, like the three of us here, are, for better or for worse, just destined to be friends forever. Yeah. And we're destined to just record YouTube videos together. And, whether we like it or not, that's our destiny. That's our fate. No matter how far away Rauzi tries to move.
So you could say we're always going to be...
Yeah, that's right.
Friends?
Moon! Moon is a song that uses the metaphor of a moon and a planet as... Who sang this one? Can somebody help me out?
Jin.
As Jin.
Solo song.
This is Jin's solo song, and it was... he uses the metaphor of a moon and a planet kind of revolving around the planet as a metaphor for his love and appreciation of Army. He is the moon, they're the planet. I think this is kind of like a song that shows that he takes, or probably all of BTS, but they take like a fan-centered approach. Like, they are the center, and we're just orbiting around them. I think that's really neat.
Yeah, I think it... I don't think there's very many songs that come to mind about artists writing songs about their fans. I can tell you Long Live by Taylor Swift.
Colton's song.
Colton's song by Good Trouble. Yeah. I mean, those are 3 prime examples, but it doesn't happen very often. And I think, the relationship that ARMY and BTS have is so unique and so special because there's not many artists that put the same love back into their fans as their fans put into them. And this was just another one with like a really kind of just like fun disco funk guitar. And it was fun. Like melody wise, it wasn't like the most spectacular. But it was a fun danceable song.
Yeah, and I will say to Tyler's point that he made a couple songs ago, this was kind of my tipping point, I think, for the length of the album, where I really didn't like this song all that much. But what I can say is that there's one thing I like, it's when a band appreciates their fans, like you guys were saying. I love music that is very fan service based, or where they really appreciate and respect their fans. And I think that's a wonderful thing that BTS does. I don't get a lot out of it yet because I'm not really a diehard BTS fan yet. We're starting our journey, right? And there's a lot of people farther on that journey.
We is a strong word coming from you.
Whatever. I am starting my journey. You guys are like 3 steps through the door or whatever. But
5 or 6.
This is going to mean so much to the diehard fans that it deserves its place on this album, even if it doesn't do a lot for me as someone who's new to the experience.
Respect. That's the next song, right?
Yes, it is.
Okay, cool. Nailed it. Hell yeah. So this is a fun little RM Suga duo. Just simply discussing the meaning of the word respect. And I think it's a really fun, like kind of old school hip hop style song, and it's just it lyrically it just sounds like they're having fun, basically just shooting the shit. But what does respect really mean? There's some kind of tongue-in-cheek moments, some like puns and double entendres and stuff like that. But it's just a fun song.
I agree with you about the tongue-in-cheek part, but at the same time, I actually think that there is a good point here about how like some people throw around the word respect and don't put a lot of meaning behind it or really understand what they're trying to get at.
Flippantly.
So I think, very flippantly.
I learned today that word has 2 P's.
It does. But so to your point, like even though it is very fun and lighthearted, I think there is a deeper meaning there where they're talking about like, what is it? I mean, people are talking about this, but especially for someone as famous as them, people can say they respect them, but they can say it just to gain something from them. So like,
true.
I don't know. I love this song. I appreciate you mentioning the classic hip hop element of it because I think that was fantastic, and it's one of my favorite songs on the album. I really love this song.
Yeah, there's some like record scratches in there, some like turntable work. That was really fun.
Ricka.
Oh yeah, I love
Respect.
Also, apparently, I was reading a little bit about Korea, how this ties into Korean culture. There's a word that I'm not going to be able to pronounce that they say in this song, which is like a term for calling someone an older brother. And it's sort of towards the outro of the song. And I think one of them is calling the other like your older brother. And apparently that's a sign of respect in Korea. I thought that was a really cool detail to add in for me of just like learning some stuff about Korean culture and using some things that are a sign of respect in this song. It's very cool.
When I respect my elders, I call them boy. What's up, boy? We gotta get this thing moving. Holy crap.
Jesus Christ.
All right, so we're on to number 18, which is We Are Bulletproof, The Eternal. This song is it's a good summation of the journey for the band, right? Like we said, that's a big theme throughout this whole album, and I think that this song does a good job of summarizing that and talking about how they're thankful to like ARMY for helping them get to the other side of some struggles that they had in their career, and how they feel that they're sort of through some of the problems because they just feel like they're bulletproof now because they have this support system around them. So it's I like the message there. It's a good song.
Yeah, they have that line about like the beginning, like they were 7, now they're
we are not 7 with you.
Yeah.
I think is how it ends. Yeah. This is apparently there's a We Are Bulletproof series. This is the 3rd song in the line of their We Are Bulletproof. Mm-hmm. There's a 1 and a 2, and this is the 3rd, and I think final one from what I gathered about that. This is one of the few songs that has every member on it, so I think that perfectly makes sense in a song that is kind of another
fan
love
service
song.
one.
Love
Yeah.
song to the fans, an appreciation song to them. I think it only makes sense that every member is featured on it. I hit my tipping point probably long before this song, but I think I didn't fully appreciate this song as much as I could have, because like 18 songs and I was just like, so many songs, kind of another musically not doing a ton different.
It's also one of the longer songs on the album.
It is, yeah.
That brings us to basically the last song, outro, Ego, and this it kind of just is the song for that theme, right? They're exploring the inner journey of ego and kind of embracing their past struggles. Is there anything more you guys would like to add to that?
Yeah, it's a J-Hope solo track, his solo track on the album, featuring a spoken intro from RM. And it does sample their 2013 song Intro, Too Cool for School.
Again.
Similar, very similar.
I remember them saying "too cool for school" in the beginning there, so
yeah,
that makes sense.
That is what that is. Yeah.
I think they did add a little bit of additional like lyrical ideas in terms of like there was some verses that kind of played into the idea that self-resolve and putting aside your fears and trusting in that what you are doing is going to lead you to success has been something that's like helped them along their way in the journey. And I really liked that message too, because I think that's something that I can struggle with sometimes, of not always trusting myself as much as I should. And that's an important message, to be confident in what you're doing.
That basically wraps out the album. They throw this Sia feature on at the end, and I don't know. Did you just give it the same rating as the other one because it doesn't really add or anything?
It is almost, in my eyes, the same exact song.
Yeah, so my take on it is I've never really understood features like this, especially when the song that is featuring this person is on the same project. I've never really liked it when artists like come out with that version 3 months later with them featured. It really just doesn't like, it doesn't really
Go ahead, come
cut
up with
my
an
carrots.
idiot. There we go. There it is. Doesn't
And-
toss his salad, ladies and gentlemen.
doesn't really cut my carrots, and I don't know. Do you guys have any thoughts on it?
Yeah. So this is actually my least favorite on the album. It's almost not fair to say that because it feels like it just a
I did
random
the same
added
thing,
bonus track.
yeah.
But it's my least favorite because I actually think the song is made significantly worse by the changes made to it because of how unnecessary they were. And I actually think the Sia feature makes no sense to me. I don't think it adds anything to the song. It's so subtle. It's like Sia's almost not even featured that much, and then when Sia is featured, it doesn't make the track better. So I gave it a pretty low score because of that. I think that this one is another one that for fans of the band who have been fans for a long time, perhaps they appreciate a remix with another artist on it. And so I see why they may add this track, and it probably was not intended for me, but especially being an hour and a little over 10 minutes into this, I didn't feel like I needed this to round out the album, right?
Yeah, I mean, I would actually be curious. So this is my question for Army. Like, do you guys, like Rauzi said, is this something that you want? Is this something like when you say, oh, this is on featuring Sia, is that something that like cuts your carrot? Because to us, it doesn't make sense. Maybe it makes sense to you. If it makes sense to you, let us know why we're probably wrong. But yeah, like if people like it, tell us why. Help us understand. And that does it. Ladies and gentlemen, we made it to the end. You know what that sound means? It is time to hear us out. This is the part of the episode where we each give our individual score. We'll average them out, and we'll give the album its score, and we will rank it amongst the other albums that we've talked about so far. Tyler.
Well, let me tell you about my individual score. So one thing I noticed is that we talked about this, but the imagery and the metaphors throughout are really strong. That like they're really, the building blocks of this album is the imagery and the lyricism and the songwriting. Because to me, like the pop music is just pop music of the time. Like that's not doing a whole lot for me. Yes, there are times where that complements the song and it does a good job of like fitting in, but really what stood out to me about this song was the use of metaphor in the songwriting. I had a lot of fun analyzing the lyrics. One thing that didn't really come up much is I noticed that the choruses were really like pop choruses where they're super vague. in most parts, where the choruses are just vague, but the verses are really where they're explaining kind of the context of the song. And that's where you get those themes, and then like the choruses kind of support it, or more of that pop like generic thing. I enjoy this album. I'm going to rate it as if that Sia song is not on there, because I think it's just ancillary. So my rating for this is a 7.25.
Rauzi,
Yes.
talk to me, baby.
Yeah, I would love to. So I'm going to echo a little bit of what Tyler said. When it came to the pop songs, I think there were several moments where I enjoyed them much more than I would have expected a pop song to be enjoyable for me, because of the execution. The production was strong. You could tell the band cares on every song, and they really put a lot of thought and detail into the songs, even if it's not the type of music I typically like to listen to. There are moments that are a little bit more generic, but there also are these highlights of this great hip-hop and rap blend, and every song is different, and it's so deep lyrically and thematically. I learned a lot while researching the lyrics and trying to understand what's going on in the song, and it was thought-provoking and just a really enjoyable way to craft a story and an album. And I love albums that are thematically similar throughout and tell a story throughout the whole thing, and I really feel like they did an excellent job of that. Overall, I think it's a little bit difficult because of the fact that I don't think there's a lot of re-listen value on this for me, just because I can't sit down and spend an hour and 15 minutes reading the lyrics. There'll be individual songs that I'll definitely throw on playlists and stuff like that, but I think that language barrier is tough for me, and that's not a detraction from the band. That's just something is a problem because I'm an English-speaking person. With that all being said, I'm still going to give this album a 6.7, as I think it was very strong.
Yeah, I'm just going to go out and echo everything that also has been said by the two of you as well. I think being able to sit down and listen to this album and just like learn. The last time I sat down and listened to music and was inspired to research was never ago. And I think that is something we're forced to do because we have to basically look up what the songs mean, and B, because what the songs meant were something that was thought-provoking and insightful
And objective.
Yeah, there were metaphors, but also it's very much talking about things that
Subjective?
exist. It was both objective and subjective.
The best things are.
Blend of both. Best of both worlds. Yeah, and I just enjoyed this journey. I've probably listened to this album near 50 times.
No, this one's by BTS, not Journey. Sorry, it's
Just let him finish, dude.
You are delaying it.
You guys have said Journey 15 times, and every time I'm like, I gotta say it, but I can't.
That's a theme of the freaking album. Deal with it. All right, Obi.
Long story short, I enjoyed this album way more actually taking the time to sit down and listen to it and learn about it than I did 5 years ago, and I'm very grateful that I did. I give this a 7.4 out of 10. So to recap, Tyler gave this album a 7.25, Rauzi gave this album a 6.7, and I gave this album a 7.4 for an average of a 7.12, throwing it in the top 4 just behind The Father of Make Believe by Coheed and Cambria, and paced decently ahead of Falling for Robots and Wishing I Was One by Lolo.
Thank you for listening to Map of the Soul 7 with us. Next episode, we are going to be listening to Comfort Eagle by Cake, so please start listening to that album now so you can be part of our next discussion. That episode is going to be coming out on July 23rd. If there's an album you would like us to listen to, please throw it down in the comments below. We would like to listen to some music that you suggest, so let us know what we should listen to. Thank you all so much for watching this video, and thanks to Obi and Tyler for reviewing some new music with me. Do you agree with our rankings? Are we right? Are we horribly off base? Are we being very insensitive by not rating this even higher? Or, I don't know. You tell us. That's what the comments are for. So hit us up down below and let us know what else you'd like us to do. And if you're feeling extra adventurous, please click the playlist on the screen to check out our BTS journey. Thank you for your attention.